GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network. You're listening to the Better Live Than Dead podcast on the Gear Radio Network.
And with that, we welcome you to the Better Live Than Dead podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 155.
155.
If you do math correctly, that equals 11.
Yes, it does.
Common Core, it might equal 73. I'm not sure, but it's 155.
Probably.
It's NFL Week 12 cast. You can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. You can hear not only the Better Live Than Dead podcast, but all BLTD podcasts and all Gear Radio Network podcasts as well. I am your host, Ryan Wolfe, at WolfeBLTD. Joining me on the IndyCar Media Hotline, it is the man himself, Mr. Perez, at MRLG Perez. And I'm not even going to ask you, Lewis, what's going on. I'm not going to ask you how you're doing. There's a specific 3 big things this week brought to you by FortunePhoto.com. And if you can see my notes here, Lewis, the first 3 big things, I kid you not. Number 1, let's get Lewis mad about the Cowboys. So we're just going to dive in head first. How you doing? And then we're going to talk about the Cowboys.
You know what, man? Listen, I'm actually outside. We'll get to the Cowboys. Other than that, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. After months of searching for a job, I finally found one that fits me to a T. Thank you very much. I'm going to be a manager, a territory manager for Google in this area. It'll basically be the same exact thing that I was doing for Microsoft, but with Google. So very happy about that.
Beautiful. Now you'll have 17 cell phones again.
I will have 17 cell phones again. You remember when I used to carry on those cell phones?
No joke. Tearing down the fourth wall real quick. Back when we used to do, back in the infancy of the Better Live Than Dead podcast, and I still lived out in Greece with my sister and my brother-in-law for a little while there, in the original BLTD studios, Lewis would come over and he would have 3 or 4 cell phones, and they would all go off during the podcast, not only simultaneously, but at random times.
Yeah, they would. They would. So
unreal.
I'll be back to that, but instead of Microsoft cell phones, it'll be Google cell phones, which is fine because I already carry a Google Pixel 2 XL.
I have a Google Pixel 2 and I love it. I think I might actually buy the Google Home or the Google Nest Hub now, is because they bought all that Nest product stuff. The Google Nest Hub.
They'll be sending me one of those, so I'm looking forward to playing around with it for free.
I mean, I have a bunch of Wi-Fi plugs, a couple Wi-Fi power strips. I have my Nest thermostat, my Ring Cam, so I think it'll work out well. And it's only, if I'm not mistaken, Black Friday at Target, $79, and then I get 5% off with my red card, so it won't be a bad deal.
Not at all.
Now, Lewis, to get you mad about football, about sports in general, and let me just little spoiler alert. I don't think I disagree with you, but Dallas lost to New England. That wasn't really surprising because, I mean, honestly, the Patriots have not been great this year offensively, but they keep finding ways to win. That is the difference of a good coach and a veteran quarterback who knows how to win football games. Dallas falls to 6-5 on the season, but the big story of the game, the controversial penalties. There were 2 tripping penalties that stalled out Dallas's offense, and replays show potentially egregious errors made by officials. Now, first off, there was one flag that came on a 2nd and 13, which then subsequently turned into a 2nd and 23. That drive stalled. A punt was subsequently blocked, which led to a New England touchdown drive. Now, again, the penalty did not lead to a punt being blocked, so you can't really say if this, then that, but that's just the context here. The second flag came on a 3rd and 1 play, which Ezekiel Elliott ran for a first down. The play then went from 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 11 after the penalty, which then resulted in a turnover on downs. Now, Lewis, before I get your thoughts here, Dallas offensive lineman Travis Frederick, one of the best in the game, said, quote, I don't understand the rule evidently. I need to get a clarification on that. When I tried to get a clarification on that, the umpire was nowhere to be found. Now, Lewis, there's no need right now in the podcast for the BS that the Patriots get all the calls. We'll talk about that in just a minute because that's quite the narrative. But when should these referees be held accountable? Because clearly, again, I know a lot of penalties in the National Football League are the naked eye. And when we're able to watch it at 60, 75, whatever frames per second, we can see, okay, he tripped on his own. He wasn't tripped. He fell over. He stumbled over, whatever it may be. At what point do we start holding these referees accountable for calls that potentially swung the game?
Oh, I think you have to start looking at that because, frankly, I'll get into my anger in a second because there's a little bit more here you want to talk about. But
talk about.
Yes, but when we look at this particular plays, and we look at this game, when it was pretty darn clear that there was no tripping, there's been 4 tripping calls in the NFL this season. 4. And 3 of them came last night. That's garbage. And even
so I was going to say, looking at, I don't know if it was 3. It might have been 2. But I want to point out something interesting, Lewis. Strange coincidence, but still, at Dan Morse _ points out on Twitter, only 2 games where a team was called for tripping twice since 2009. That's 10 years for those of you who've lost track of time. Dallas on Sunday and Dallas in week 9 of 2014. So this doesn't get called often, but when it does, it happens to the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes, it does. And frankly, last night, the 2nd and 13, terrible call, whatever. But can I get mad now, or do you want to continue with your?
Hey, we're recording. You can get mad whenever you want to.
Okay, listen. I'm not going to make any excuses for the Dallas Cowboys. Well, I'm going to make a couple excuses real quick. I take that back. First of all, let's just be honest. Dallas
I'm not going to do it. Well I'm not going to do it, but I'm about to do it.
I'm about to do it. Dallas did not play well last night, okay? They only scored, 9 points?
9 points.
But they were only down by 4. And the game is winding up, and they're driving the ball. It seems like they figure something out. They're driving the ball. They convert the first down, and all of a sudden, there's another tripping call. And if you watch the replay, there's no way in Hades that was a trip. It was utterly, utterly, utterly ridiculous.
And well, and we have, and there's Lewis. There is evidence to back that up. I've got the receipts here. I looked on Twitter. I looked on news articles. I was picking up tweets. Multiple former NFL linemen on Twitter were up in arms about those calls. You had Emmanuel Acho said, quote, I believe that's Acho or Acho. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name. You all know I suck at that. He said, quote, worst call of the weekend during the biggest game of the weekend. Kevin Mawai used to play for the Jets and I believe the Titans as well. Said, quote, I have tripped a guy before and that is not tripping. That is stumbling. As in the defensive end made an inside move and stumbled through the B gap. Awful call. Also, ex-NFL referee John Perry, who works for ESPN, I believe his Twitter is at ESPN John Perry, P-A-R-R-Y, said, quote, twice in this game, the leg came up as part of an off-balance block, some tangled legs, but no intentional overt leg action, to trip the defender. So again, naked eye, it might look like a trip. Slow it down. It doesn't. It definitely is not a trip. Now, the one thing I want to bring up to you, because this is an interesting thought, and we've seen this before with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. Some conspiracy theorists on Twitter think that maybe Bill Belichick is back to his – I mean, he always is playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers, but if there's something he noticed on tape before the game or there's something he noticed during the game where he pulled a referee aside and said, hey, just a heads up, the offense is tripping, keep an eye out for it. So then now that the referees are ultra hyper-vigilant, ultra-aware hyper-vigilant, going, okay, we know that it's on tape that they're tripping guys. We need to keep an eye out for this, so they pay more attention to it. Because obviously the plays that we saw that were called tripping, not tripping. But to the naked eye in real time, it's a judgment call at that point.
Yeah, okay. So the first tripping call, there was a bull rush. The guy got thrown into the defender. I mean, the offensive line guy, and when he got thrown into him, it was sideways, which brought his leg up a little bit. But it wasn't a trip. Like, it was a clear, anyway. And then the second one, like, there was nothing. He wasn't even, like, close to a trip. So, yeah. So I've gotten used to everyone jokes around about the Patriots get these type of calls. And then at the end of the game, when Tom Brady threw the football out of bounds, and somehow there was 1 second left, that was weird. But afterwards, in his press conference, Tom Brady was like, and they say the Patriots get all the calls. Apparently that's not correct. I wanted to be like, shut your freaking mouth, Tom Brady. Because
he's just trolling you at that point. I mean, come on.
Well, yes, I know. But you know what? Listen, the Cowboys lost.
Yeah, the Cowboys did not do. They did not.
We don't know what was going to happen on that last drive.
Exactly. It's one of those situations where it sucks. It's those calls suck when they go against you. But then you look at it and you think to yourself, well, yeah, you think to yourself, you shouldn't put your team in that position anyways, where you can blame a tripping call.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, but I mean, what position? People crashing into each other? Come on,
well, it's like at the end of the game when you miss a game-winning field goal and you're like, okay, well, we should have won that game, but we lost on a missed field goal. It's like, to be quite honest, your team shouldn't have been in that position in the first place. If you want to play devil's advocate and split hairs here, the Cowboys should have. If the Cowboys played better and scored more than 9 points, we would be saying, hey, those are bad calls, but the Cowboys won. Who cares?
Yeah, but I mean, it's a football game, dude. They were only down by 4 points. If they had scored,
let's be honest, the entire night they were not doing much the rest of the game.
No, they weren't. I'm not saying they were. But what I'm saying is it looked like they had figured something out. They were driving pretty well, and all of a sudden...
I'm just not buying the conspiracy theory of the refs killing the drive purposefully. I mean, it is shit happens. It sucks when it goes against you, but shit ultimately happens. I mean,
it happens a lot.
If Stephon Gilmore didn't shut down Amari Cooper, maybe the offense would have been better. If Dak Prescott threw for more than 199 yards, maybe the offense would have done better.
Oh yeah, but the weather was terrible. That was
absolutely. It wasn't even a driving rain. It was just like a monsoon. It was weird.
It was sideways, dude. It was crazy. And here is the problem. There was a ton of plays where Amari Cooper wasn't even on the field. Dak Prescott ran for like 89 yards, only had like 20 touches. Why wasn't he in there more? Jason Garrett needs to go. Period. He needs to be fired. They have the Cowboys had a chance to score more than they should have. They were inside the 20 at one point, and Garrett didn't even call a play for Ezekiel Elliott, even though he had been gashing him all night. So,
I mean, Jason Garrett is definitely conservative. Yeah, there's no doubt about it that Jason Garrett is more conservative than anything. But I think at the end of the day, you might be worse with the Cowboys than I am with the Bills. I mean, the Bills are at least 8-3. The Cowboys are 6-5, but the Cowboys still lead the division, and everyone else is still really bad in their division. And I mean, even if the Bills beat the Cowboys this week, which we'll talk about in a little bit, Dallas should still hold the NFC East lead. Even at 6-6, they would still lead the division. So again, it's not a great year for the Cowboys, but it's a great year for them to have a bad year in the NFC East.
That's true. That's true. But with the talent they have on the field, they should be playing better.
No doubt about it. They should want more, and Jerry Jones should expect more out of that team. And even it's a situation where even if the Cowboys win the NFC East, they get their home playoff game and they lose, there should be changes because you should want more.
Yeah. Well, last night it was the first time I've seen Jerry Jones be critical of the coaching, and he was very clear.
Well, I was going to say, who else can you blame? You've got Dak Prescott, who leads the NFL in passing yards. You've got Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. You've got Amari Cooper, who's been great. You've got a defense that isn't half bad at all. mean, you've got one of the best offenses in the league all around. You know,
Right.
who are you going to blame?
Right. I'm not taking anything away from the Patriots. Their defense is amazing.
Yeah, their defense won that game because their offense is still one of the worst that they've had in years, if not decades.
Yeah.
But again, there's the difference. There's the difference, Lewis.
Yeah, no, I agree. Bill Belichick out-coached Jason Garrett last night. Garrett is just, he needs to go.
That's the Brady Belichick advantage. They know how to out-coach you. They can outplay you in almost every situation because they've done it all. They've seen it all. They've been through it all. And they continue to win.
Absolutely.
I feel like that team has no business being 10-1, but they're 10-1 because they know how to win. I hate that. It's so stupid and cliche. But you watch Sunday night's game against the Cowboys. How'd they win? Because they know how to. They find ways to win. They find ways to get the one up, and they take advantage of it. That's all. Did I lose you? I was going to say, I thought I lost you in anger there.
They should be thanking the refs. Anyway, let's move on, man.
Your conspiracy theories are trash.
Let's move on.
Absolutely. Let's move over to the second of the three big things this week. Week 12 rewind. Look at some big games here. First off, on Thursday Night Football, Houston defeats Indianapolis 20-17. Houston's quarterback, Deshaun Watson, 19 for 30, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns with 3 rushes for 10 yards. Big news here is that Houston takes sole possession of the AFC South with a victory. Looking over at Cleveland now, and I want to get your thoughts on the Browns here. Cleveland defeats Miami 41-24. Cleveland quarterback Baker Mayfield, 24 of 34, 327 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, and 2 rushes for 5 yards. Cleveland running back Nick Chubb continues to be great. 21 rushes for 106 yards and a touchdown with 3 receptions for 58 yards. Chubb is 6 yards behind Christian McCaffrey for the NFL rushing lead. Chubb is also on pace for 1,625 rushing yards. Now, Lewis, Cleveland continues their upward momentum swing with their 3rd straight win. They currently sit in 10th in the AFC, but they are 1 game behind a 6th-place Pittsburgh team, whom they play next week. So, do you think that Cleveland can beat Pittsburgh and play their way back into the playoffs? And do you think this is just like they're just getting red hot, or is it the schedule getting easier, mixture of both? What do you think's going on over in Cleveland right now?
I think it's a mixture of both. They played Miami. Like, good job. You destroyed Miami. You should destroy Miami. But I think it's a little bit mixture of both. They've all looked a little bit better than they did at the start of the season. I don't know if they're going to beat Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh keeps finding ways to eke out a game too. And those two teams hate each other, so I think it'll be a good smash mouth type of game. I thought Cleveland might make the playoffs at the beginning of the year, but the more that they play, I don't see it.
I mean, they have a very favorable schedule throughout the rest through the rest of the way. I could see them easily winning 10 games, which will continue to put pressure on the Buffalo Bills to win games like Dallas and Pittsburgh and the Jets and maybe New England and maybe Baltimore. But I don't think those games are winnable. But that's neither here nor there.
I don't think the Bills will beat the Patriots or the Ravens.
Cleveland's schedule started off difficult. And I think a lot of people got down on them, rightfully so, because Freddie Kitchens didn't look like he had a clue, and he still really doesn't. But they're doing what they need to do. They're beating up on bad teams. And that's, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it'll be fun if they make the playoffs.
I think so, too.
Cleveland fan.
I also did see a stat. I did see a stat, too. Here's a good one. I didn't write it down, but I have it on the top of my mind here. Cleveland, Baker Mayfield became the first quarterback since Tim Couch to win 5 games in back-to-back seasons for the Browns.
Wow. That's terrible.
I think that was since 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
Rough.
That's pretty
Very
bad.
rough. Yeah. Speaking of bad, New Orleans and Carolina. New Orleans defeats Carolina 34-31. The good, New Orleans kicker Will Lutz, game-winning 33-yard field goal as time expired. The bad and ugly, Carolina kicker Joey Sly, who might be out of a job here shortly, missed a go-ahead field goal and 2 extra points in the game. To watch players to watch in the game. Carolina running back Christian McCaffrey again went off. 22 rushes for 64 yards and 1 touchdown with 9 receptions for 69 yards. Very nice. And 1 touchdown. McCaffrey continues to be on that stellar pace that he's been on all season, yet the Carolina Panthers can't seem to win. New Orleans moves closer to winning their division and also potentially closer to clinching a first-round bye in the NFC playoffs.
Was this game played in the Superdome?
It was.
So there'd be no bad weather or crosswinds or
nope. Dude just
anything
shanked
like that. You can't miss those type of kicks.
No.
Especially extra points. I get it.
That's another thing too. You mentioned the Superdome. The one thing I want to bring up, because I heard it tonight I was watching some TV before we jumped on the podcast here. One thing I want to mention, if New Orleans wants to go to the Super Bowl and make up for last year's blown call in the NFC Championship game, I think their way to the Super Bowl, I think it's in Miami this year, so we'll just say Miami. Their way to Miami this year will be through the Superdome. If they don't get home field advantage, I mean, they may have to go on the road to play San Francisco or whomever may end up being the 1 seed in the NFC to go to the NFC or to the Super Bowl on behalf of the NFC. But if they want that Superdome is home field advantage, there is absolutely unreal. And if even if your team is playing great, we saw with Carolina the pressure that stadium, the raucousness of the crowd puts an insane amount of pressure on an opposing team. And that is evident, and that has been evident. And I think that gives – I mean, Drew Brees has looked great. Michael Thomas could potentially be – it sounds crazy, but Michael Thomas, a wide receiver, could potentially catch his way into the MVP race. He's been that damn good. The defense has been good, as you can tell by the record. The offense has been good, as you can tell by the record. And like I said, the offense being good, the defense being good, and that crowd being loud as hell, they are a tough out for sure.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Now let's take a look at the Meadowlands here, Lewis, really quick. John, if you're listening to the podcast, turn your audio down for about, I'll say 30 seconds. The Jets fall to Oakland, or the Jets defeat Oakland. I don't know why I told John to turn the radio down because the Jets didn't lose. The Jets won. John, turn your radio back up. What the hell am I doing? The Jets defeat Oakland 34-3. They continue their hot streak. The Jets have been white hot. Sam Darnold looked great. That offense has been gelling. The defense has been fantastic. But Oakland did not look fantastic. And the thing about this game that's so important, Lewis, Oakland falls into the vast nothingness, as I've dubbed it, of the 6-5 teams in the AFC. Oakland had the perfect, golden opportunity to gain an upper hand in the wild card race and duffed it. So now there's a big old stretch. And as I mentioned, from 6 to 10, is I believe 6-5 right now. So that's a little wild. We'll talk about that in a little bit here shortly. But again, the Jets crush the Raiders, and they continue their hot streak. And hey, they're not too far out of the playoff picture either. They're making a late comeback for it. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. Now looking over Seattle versus Philadelphia.
That game was weird, man.
I didn't know you wanted to talk about it. I thought you didn't watch it.
I did not see. I didn't think Oakland would get blown out by like that, like the Jets, man. That was just.
I mean, we know West Coast teams struggle to travel east, but I thought Oakland was better than a 34-3 loss to the Jets. Absolutely.
Dude, it was like Deontay Wilder fighting Ortiz. You think someone's going to win, and they're up on the cards, and then bang, good night.
Dude, Wilder's way too good.
Yeah, that punch was nasty.
That video of watching the guy get the sweat punched off his head, that was wow.
God,
there's a reason why I don't box.
That punch hurt me.
Yeah, absolutely. Seattle, Lewis, defeats Philadelphia 17-19 in an ugly game, very ugly game in Philadelphia. But Seattle's defense, not ugly. 2 interceptions, 3 recovered fumbles, 3 sacks, 8 tackles for a loss, 6 pass deflections, and 10 quarterback hits in a day where Russell Wilson only threw for, I believe, 200 yards. They still get the win. They hold down Philadelphia. Philadelphia is kind of taking on water, bobbing up and down, in and out of the water. They're a good team. They're a talented team. You know that in the NFC East, but They can't seem to put it together. Carson Wentz gets hurt again. He has a bruised, I think they said bruised middle finger or bruised finger, whichever is the correct information. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I don't care to remember. Either way, the Eagles are below 500. Seattle continues their strong push to get a top seed in the NFC. Another team, Lewis, that made a strong push, continues to make a strong push, continues to impress every single week. The San Francisco 49ers defeat the very good Green Bay Packers. Don't get it twisted. This was a great team beating a great team. 37-8. Now, the San Francisco 49er defense held Aaron Rodgers to 104 passing yards on 33 attempts. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. 104 passing yards. They also held running back Aaron Jones, who's having an incredible season, to 38 rushes on 13 carries. San Francisco quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, a game managed perfectly by Garoppolo. He completed 14 of 20 passes for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns. As we mentioned, again, San Francisco defeats Green Bay 37-8. And Lewis, they look like they are the class of the NFC at this point in time.
If you had told me that San Francisco was going to hold Aaron Rodgers the 3 yards a pass, I would have laughed at you. I'd have been like, yeah, okay, sure. But yeah, they took Green Bay and just punched them in the mouth. I mean, I did not expect that. I honestly thought Green Bay was probably going to win that game. And San Francisco just stopped on that. Like, holy cow. They look phenomenal. Good for San Fran. I don't want them to win a Super Bowl, but good for San Fran.
I mean, they continue to look good week in and week out. It's kind of like the Baltimore Ravens when you say, well, they haven't had a test yet. They haven't had a test yet. And then they finally get a test and you're like, oh, wow, they are actually good. And that's another thing, too. We are not talking about Baltimore and Los Angeles because it is 8:05 on Monday, the 25th of November. So that game has not happened yet, but we can talk about it next week if anything crazy happens. But again, Lewis, I'm all on board for the NFC. It is stacked. The NFC playoffs are going to be just absolutely amazing to watch.
Absolutely.
Now, onto our third of the three big things, other NFL news. First off, we'll start from the bottom up because the news gets better as we go. First off, Indianapolis Colts tight end Eric Ebron headed to the injured reserve because of an ankle injury. Apparently, he's got to have both of them scoped out. That doesn't sound very fun, but a disappointing season ends for Ebron with 31 receptions for 375 yards and 3 touchdowns as he heads to unrestricted free agency at season's end. He's had a couple good years with Indianapolis, but this last season, his last of the contract, not too good, not as good as he wanted it to be. Pittsburgh Steelers, they bench quarterback Mason Rudolph in their 16-10 victory over Cincinnati. Rudolph was 8 for 16 for 85 yards and an interception. He's not great. He hasn't been great, but they think that he might be great. I don't know. But either way, Devlin Rogers, or is that his name? I can't remember the backup to the backup. He's the Dwight Schrute of the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback depth chart.
Pretty much.
But either way, Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh, and we'll move on. San Francisco, speaking of them again, Lewis, this guy is way tougher than both you and I combined. George Kittle returned to the lineup with broken bones in his ankle. It was described as a bone chip. Now, also, he's dealing with a popped capsule in his knee, which led him to miss 2 games. The ankle didn't cause him to miss time. It was the popped capsule in his knee, which is probably like a bursa sac or something. Probably got infected, whatever. Maybe just let it get better. He'll be fine. He had 6 receptions for 129 yards and a touchdown versus Green Bay on Sunday. I think he might be healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I've had knee issues. I don't know what a pop capsule is, but I've had other knee issues, and I know it's difficult to walk sometimes, let alone run and catch a bunch of passes. So, yeah, go for him. That's a tough dude right there.
Yeah, he's a tough ass, and he's also, I think, the best tight end in football right now.
Oh, easily.
Also, the best story of the week. Washington quarterback Dwayne Haskins misses the final snap of his first NFL victory as a starter. Come to find out, Lewis, Dwayne Haskins was spotted taking a selfie with fans while Case Keenum went in to take the final snap and kneel the ball down, securing the victory for Washington on Sunday.
got nothing, man.
I got nothing either. I couldn't believe it. Then I saw the photo and I believed it.
Yeah. I would, if I was the Washington Redskins, I'd have to define them or something. I mean, you should be paying attention to the game, bro. I
mean, it's bad when your starting quarterback doesn't pay enough attention to the game to know that he's still needed on the field.
Yeah, no, that's terrible. That's horrible.
Good job.
And that just speaks to what the Washington Redskins have become.
That just speaks to the ineptitude of the Washington franchise. That is correct. Yeah, I would say so.
Exactly.
Top down, they're just they're clown shoes, my man.
For real.
Now, looking ahead, the playoff picture. First off, in the AFC, 1-6, which no matter the result from Monday Night Football, whether Baltimore wins or loses, or Los Angeles wins or loses, this will all be the same. I already did the research. You can trust me on this one. 1-6 in the AFC. You've got New England, Baltimore, Houston, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh. So right now you're looking Houston, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Buffalo in the wild card round. Lowest seed goes to New England. Higher seed goes to Baltimore. That'd be fun. In the NFC, like I said, absolutely incredible matchups. Right now you've got 1-6, San Francisco, New Orleans, Green Bay, Dallas, Seattle, and Minnesota. So, excuse me again. I apologize here. Getting a little burpy. Green Bay would host Minnesota. Dallas would host Seattle. Lowest seed goes to San Francisco. Higher seed goes to New Orleans. So you could potentially be, I mean, again, things can change, but I think the NFC might actually be pretty close to being locked up. Aside from Dallas, give or take, could be Philadelphia there. You could be looking at, say, Seattle beats Dallas and Green Bay beats Minnesota. You could be looking at Green Bay, New Orleans, Seattle, San Francisco. And holy crap, games like that, sign me up. That would be real. I mean, I know you want the Cowboys to win and all that, but like any sort of matchup that you're going to have, it's going to be incredible. I mean, the NFC is going to be appointment television, even more than playoff football already is, because the matchups are going to be, I hate to sound like John Madden here, but they're going to be great football players playing great football games. Great football teams against great football teams is going to be a great football game, you know?
No, absolutely. First of all, yes, I would want Dallas to win, but if Seattle ends up playing against San Fran, if you think about their last game, that was a killer game. That's the type of football you want to see. So, yeah.
I mean, and I think Russell Wilson, another stat I failed to throw in the podcast, but I remember, with his win on Sunday, Russell Wilson, I believe they said, becomes the first NFL quarterback to have a winning season all first 8 years of his career. So again, Russell Wilson, he's quickly jumped up the charts of quarterback greats for sure. He's very talented, and I think he doesn't. I mean, Seattle's still really good. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's the East Coast bias thing. If he played for the Giants, the Jets, the Patriots, anybody in the 1 o'clock time slot, to be quite honest, I think he would be even bigger of a star.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
Now, looking at some Week 13 matchups before we wrap up the podcast here, Lewis, there are a couple ones we'll talk about for sure. One in specific, I'm sure you can guess, but we'll just kind of run down here real quick. First off, Tennessee at 6-5 versus Indianapolis at 6-5. Indy's kind of scuffled. I almost said scattered. That doesn't make any damn sense. Indianapolis scuffling a little. Tennessee has kind of found their way under Ryan Tannehill. Really seems like Ryan Tannehill might have kind of figured it out in a team that is not a tire fire like the Miami Dolphins. You've got the streaking Cleveland Browns at 5-6 versus the Pittsburgh Steelers at 6-5. That one has immense playoff implications. You've got potentially the game of the week here. 10-1 San Francisco versus either a 9-2 or 8-3 Baltimore Ravens team. That'll be incredible to watch. That's a potential. Not only is it a former Super Bowl matchup, so it's a Super Bowl rematch from years ago, but this is a potential Super Bowl matchup so late in the season. What a treat that would be. You've got 6-5 Oakland at 7-4 Kansas City. You've got 10-1 New England at 7-4 Houston. 8-3 Minnesota at 9-2 Seattle. Another game of the week potential right there. And then the game that we have all been waiting for, Lewis, all off season, all summer, all preseason, all fall, into almost late fall, early winter. The 8-3 Buffalo Bills take on the 6-5 Dallas Cowboys at Jerry's World on Thanksgiving 4:30 p.m. Boy, am I excited to watch some Buffalo Bills football on Thanksgiving for the first time since 1994. I was 3 years old. So I don't remember that because my brain was pudding.
Right. I mean, slightly, slightly more developed now.
Allegedly.
More like tapioca.
It's more like old applesauce at this point.
There you go.
Fried, kind of crusty in the way.
I'm looking forward to this game, but I'm looking forward to Dallas getting to 2 games above 200 again. 500 again.
I mean, above 200, they're already there, you know?
They're already there. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to getting, 2 games above 500 again.
I mean, for me, going into the game, I chalk this one up as a loss going in, but with how – and I'll talk about this on Trust the Podcast on Tuesday with John, but in a nutshell, Buffalo has done – what they needed to do against Miami and even more so against Denver last week. I almost forgot who they played. I mean, that's how memorable the game was. The defense has turned it back up. They've shaken things up a bit. They've been able to get the defensive line, the defensive ends involved. The linebackers are playing great. Matt Milano, again, continues to be incredibly underrated. The cornerbacks have been playing good. Trey White had a fantastic interception on Sunday. I mean, it definitely seems like the Buffalo Bills defense is rallying at the right time. They struggled for a while. Their run defense was terrible, and it's kind of come back all around. The offense, they've got a nice little rhythm and flow. Devin Singletary seems to be the answer at running back right now, which is fantastic. Josh Allen's got a lot of confidence in John Brown, Cole Beasley. He's gaining confidence in Tyler Kroft a little. He's got confidence with Dawson Knox, but really it's Singletary, John Brown, Cole Beasley. I know that they did some crazy stuff on Sunday with Robert Foster before he got hurt. So there's a lot of wrinkles there that they could potentially deploy. But I think the one way to beat the Dallas Cowboys is the exact same way you beat the Miami Dolphins and the Denver Broncos. Control the pace of play, make them play to your tempo, make them play your game. That's it. Because it doesn't matter if Dak Prescott goes out and throws for 500 yards or 200 yards as long as you win. It doesn't matter if Zeke Elliott runs for 100 yards or 50 yards as long as you win. At this point, it's no longer about, and this is something, thankfully, John kind of talked me off the ledge here. It's no longer about style points. I mean, I'm looking at the Bills' schedule in front of me, including this game. There's 5 games left in the regular season. It's no longer about, well, I'm worried that the rush defense was bad because there's a long season left to go. No, this is it. Doesn't matter, good or bad or ugly. Style points don't matter. If you walk out the victor, that's all that matters.
Yep, get the crunch time, baby. Get the crunch time.
Not to mention those victories against Miami and Denver. Really, I mean, if Buffalo had beaten Washington or Buffalo beaten Cleveland, I'm sorry, that would have bought them so much leeway. But coming back and defeating Miami, defeating Denver, beating bad teams, good teams are supposed to beat.
Right.
That's huge. You need to win those games to give yourself that extra padding. So when you play the Dallases of the world, you play Dallas and Baltimore back to back, there's a potential you could lose those 2 games. There's a very strong potential you could lose those 2 games. Or, maybe you play them tough and win one of them. Who knows? But you have to give yourself that padding so it's not life or death every week. You can say, yep, we had a bad game. We came out, we got beat, whatever. If you go out on Thursday and have a bad game, recoup and play Baltimore at home in December, the first weekend in December. It's not the end of the world. It sucks. Yes, it's a little bump in the road, but one game at a time. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can see that road playoff game in the first round. Just keep doing your thing, and it'll be fine.
I tell you what, I'm putting it out there right now. If Dallas loses to Buffalo on Thursday, Jason Garrett will be gone before the end of the season.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I know that Jerry Jones has talked about potentially letting he hasn't said much about potentially letting him go. He says he doesn't want to make a decision during the season, but at some point in time,
you have to.
You got to do something.
Yeah.
And the hot start to the season, then they cooled completely off, and I don't know. I mean, I think Dallas could be so much better with a different head coach. At some point in time, no matter how good or bad you are, unless you're Bill Belichick, as we clearly have seen, the message gets stale. And I almost wonder if the message hasn't gotten stale in Dallas.
I think it has.
And I mean, you've got Dak Prescott, like we said, you've got one of the best offenses in the league, and you're still 6-5.
Right.
You got to find ways to be better because the Cowboys are better than that for sure. The Cowboys are better than 6-5, but they've been playing like they're 6-5. If that makes sense,
it does. Yeah.
There's a lot more potential there than what than what the product has resulted in.
100% agree.
Now, I guess, Lewis, with that being said, there's only really one more thing to do here. We want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Be safe.
Yes.
If you
happy
go out drinking,
everybody.
If you go out drinking the night before Thanksgiving with your friends or family or whomever it may be, wherever you travel from, be safe. Get a lift. Get a designated driver. Don't drink too much. You don't want to be hungover on Thanksgiving Day because you want to be able to puke and rally. And if you got to puke and rally, it's okay. Puke and rally. It's the official 2019. I can't talk right now. The official 2019 motto of Thanksgiving: puke and rally.
That's right.
That's what it'll be. I'm not going to puke and rally. I'm not going to even puke. I'm not even going to drink a lot. But my sister-in-law's 21st birthday is the day before Thanksgiving, so we shall be having a couple beverages, which would be great. But aside from that, Lewis, you and your family, by all means, please have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Send my best along.
You also.
Thank you.
Too.
John, and John's, I know I'm going to talk to John Tuesday, but John, everybody at the Gear Network, we wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. All the listeners, we same to you as well. Lewis, as always, we are better live than dead.
You are not.
I am at Wolf BLTD on Twitter. Lewis is at MRLG Perez on Twitter. Again, you can catch the podcast anywhere in the world, any podcast platform that you may listen to or check out. Aside from that, again, though, we appreciate you tuning in. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you guys very soon.
Peace.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.